The journey always begins somewhere. It can start from weakness, from aspiration, and even conquest. It can lead to amazing places with opportunities that define you. And that journey can bring you full circle, rekindle past dreams, and surround you with amazing people with incredible stories of inspiration. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Inspirational 30. I'm your host, Jim Gardiner. Thank you for joining us. This is the show where I sit down with amazing people and we have some inspiring stories to tell and hopefully inspire you at home to be a better version of yourselves tomorrow than you were today. Now today's show, I have two guests on, and it's all about really impacting our youth through the backdrop of dance. And so it's my privilege to introduce Sarah DeVito and Deena DeVito-Carl to the show. Welcome.
Hi, Jim.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. So obviously, our viewers at home have said, oh, they almost have kind of the same name. So who married who?
I married Deena's brother.
Ah, okay.
So it's all in the family.
It's all in the family.
Very much so,
And you
yeah.
work together. The name of the business is?
Innovate Dance Arts.
Innovate Dance Arts in Parksville. And so it's a dance company from youth to adults, right?
Yeah, big age range.
Yeah.
Well, 1.5 years to 99 years. Yeah. Parent and taught classes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
You
cute.
need to come in with your mom
Yeah.
or your dad or your grandma.
Yes.
It's not a daycare.
No,
It's
it's
just dropping
not,
them
no,
off.
they need a little help at that age.
Okay, so here we are. The two of you are the owners of Innovate Arts. You've been around dance all your lives, I assume? Sarah?
I started dancing, like taking classes when I was 6 or 7. And I lived in a small town up north, so it was a little bit of a challenge to find, teachers and keep teachers up there. But when we moved to Vancouver Island, I started dancing actually with Linda class, and that was part of the reason that we moved here. I had taken a summer school
Oh, okay.
in Parksville with the Parksville Ballet School. Really enjoyed it, and so my parents, when they were looking for work, decided that they would look in this area, and that's one of the reasons that we moved here.
Okay, and so, because you also danced under Linda, right?
That's right. I was actually one of Linda's very first students. So she moved to the island in 1971 and started teaching dance classes just out of the school gym in Qualicum Beach. And so my mom decided to put me in at 3-4 years old. And yeah,
And
I was hooked, yeah.
So obviously, Linda had the company for a while, right? And you two have owned it 3 years? 3 years?
3 years?
Yeah,
3
this is
years.
just the end of our third season.
Okay, and obviously, I know firsthand, it seems to be growing exponentially year to year. So
Yeah, it's growing for sure.
the love of dance is definitely out there in the community,
Yeah.
and Innovate is definitely one of the places to be. But so, for the viewers at home that may have some young kids, and how does it all start? Is there, when we think of dance, there's all these different modalities of dance, but obviously kids, they have to go through a kind of a system to find out what he or she is really into, right? Or maybe interested in.
There's a lot of levels to that.
So how does it first work? Like when people come in, they just take a class? Is there kind of a progression?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what stage they're entering at. So if they're entering at the preschool level, I mean, we build them up through that program. But often they're coming in a little bit older as well, and maybe just have an interest in trying hip hop, for example.
okay.
So they'll take a hip hop class and then watch maybe throughout the year, or maybe at year-end recital, see their friends doing a ballet group and think, maybe I want to try that. And so then the next year they'll maybe try 2 classes. And if we see some natural ability and talent, we'll encourage them to maybe consider our intensive program.
Sure.
And then build on that.
So am I right that ballet is kind of the classical, or the foundation of all dance in a sense? Is that
It's
right?
sort of the cornerstone of everything. So
Cornerstone.
if you want to go on and really be proficient in almost any genre, I mean, you could probably get away with it if you wanted to just be a tap dancer. You might not have to go to a ballet class, but it's just, as far as the vocabulary, as far as setting the body up for all the other things, I mean, you really cannot be a successful dancer without having a significant background in ballet.
Yeah. So dancers that progress later on in life, their late teens into their 20s and so forth, I mean, it's all, most of them are built on a foundation of that classical style, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen dance evolve over the years? I mean, has it stayed true to when you first started, or is it like other sports? Has it kind of evolved around that at all?
Well, I think there's a traditional element to it that, especially with the ballet, that's really important.
Sure.
And it's a lofty initiative to push sometimes, because it's not an instant thing, right? It's something that it's that foundation that you're building slowly over time. But boy, you can see the difference between dancers that are training that way. But I'm off topic.
Even ballet has evolved, though, for sure.
It has
I
to.
mean, yeah, it has to, just like anything else. But I mean, if we think back, you know, I don't know how many years ago, but you know, the real classical, traditional, like story ballets, I mean, they're still out there. That's still out there. There's a place for that, for sure. But I would say most dance companies today, like true ballet companies, aren't doing that so much anymore. It's more evolving to the contemporary side.
Well, and there's an athleticism, I think, that you see that is vastly, you know, more defined. I mean, the bar is always being raised.
And so I was interested in that because from a sports background, you see sport evolve. You see the way they train has changed, the nutrition, the science behind it, all these things. Dance is really no different, right? So are you finding more and more athletic people, for a term? I mean, are people able to do things now that they maybe couldn't have done 20 years ago?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I mean, along with that, you know, you have to be mindful, especially when you're training youth and they're wanting to do things that are more tricky and, you know, we really call those tricks. And they can be a really nice enhancement to choreography, but it pushes the limits of their body in a new way, so they have to be training appropriately and doing all those things and learning those things properly. But definitely, that's a newer element.
You had mentioned the word traditional. One of you talked about traditional, and so there is a lot of tradition in dance, obviously. You know, it's an old art. It's one of the oldest art forms. Yeah. I want to get into something that somewhat maybe in the past has been taboo, but that whole idea of body image with dancers. You know, even back in the early 90s, like when I lived in New York, I knew a lot of dancers, and there was that kind of stereotype out there that dancers don't take care of themselves. They're really harsh on their bodies. Some of the traditional teachers or mentors were very kind of old school in that approach. You know, and it seems like in this day and age, we've become more aware of being politically correct, being aware of what that does to people. So has that changed at all, or is it still somewhat rigid, you know? Like a ballerina, for example, now compared to...
I'd say it's definitely changed. I mean, certainly that's still out there, for sure. But look at Misty Copeland, for example, who's with American Ballet Theater. People told her when she was growing up she would never be a dancer because of her body type. She's very muscular. So it's definitely evolved and changed. I think there's more opportunity for dancers with different body types as well. You know, especially in the modern contemporary realm, of things. They don't have to have that really long, lean, stereotypical ballet body type anymore.
And I don't think that really, we don't propagate that kind of an idea in the setting, right? In our dance education setting, because, you know, we're trying to create confident, high-functioning young women and men, and it's not necessarily relevant to what our needs are or what we would ever ask of them. We want healthy kids. I mean, if they've just had a slushie and a bag of candy before class, especially with the little ones, it's not ideal. But yeah, we want to, and we try to emulate healthy eating at the studio too, I think, to, you know, they see us with our big salads or whatever, and we, so yeah, it's not, it would be really limiting if we were only letting dancers with very specific body types.
It's probably safe to say that the dance has evolved in a good way regarding that, more so than years past. So that's great. You know, it's definitely more all-inclusive, which is a great thing about Innovate, right? What about different topic, same kind of idea though, boys, men in dance. You know, it still seems few and far between. I know you have a handful of great kids.
Yeah, we're really
and
excited
they're
about
amazing
that.
dancers, but you're like, why wouldn't there be more of them?
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know. I don't really know where that comes from. The only thing I can think of is, you know, as a parent of a child, and if you have a little girl, that idea of your little girl going to ballet class as a little princess ballerina, right? I think that's where we get the bulk of little girls that will enter the field. And, you know, maybe that's not so appealing to little boys, but
definitely you need, you know, sort of supportive parents who are, and that's what we see, bringing little boys in, and then right from the get-go, it's okay, it's great. They're fostering something that's really not gender specific, right? And you know, they can be very masculine, and they have very masculine little roles all the way through. My 5-year-old son dances, and so we'd like more.
I know.
Bring us your boys.
Absolutely.
It's excellent. It's good. It's such a nice environment to have some gender balance too, right?
Yeah, and I think, which we're going to get into in a moment when we talk about some of the aspects, but it gives them body awareness at such a young age. And you don't get that sometimes when you're just out playing a sport. But when you're doing choreography and when you're doing those things, you're really learning about your body, even at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old.
Well, and even bringing the sport to the forefront. I remember in years past, there was soccer and hockey students that would specifically sign their students up for dance because it helped with their coordination.
Yes.
And I'm sure more than that, but that was
back
something specific.
In the late 70s, the famous Pittsburgh Steeler receiver, Lynn Swann, you know, he was public because he always make these these shoestring catches, and he's like, I go to ballet class.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, what?
Yeah.
But, you know, it really opened the door. Everyone's scratching their head. What? Like, why would you? You know, but here he is doing these graceful things, and he's able to have that body awareness and do these miraculous things, right?
I mean, it's positive on a lot of fronts, right?
100%.
Just connected mind, body.
Well, I want to take the rest of the show and really just talk about what dance does, and not only for adults, but I really this is for the youth. Like, let's talk about how it shapes, molds the youth. You see kids that come into your studio that are these shy little things, and then all of a sudden the lights go on and boom, there they are. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I can talk about it in terms of my own daughter, who is a pretty extreme introvert, and dance has really helped her. It's helped her to be able to relay emotions. That's how she relays her emotions, is through dance. she's a totally different person when she's on the stage under those lights than she is in the classroom setting, for example. Yeah, she's at home. That's her home. It's given her confidence.
She's safe there.
She's very safe there.
Which is interesting because it's a very vulnerable place to be.
I know, which is ironic, right?
It is ironic, but a lot of kids, like, that's not uncommon for somebody who's shy or introverted.
She can be somebody else for
Well,
3 minutes.
Yeah.
I've said this to you before. That's what I saw in my 10-year-old when she started.
Yeah.
Super shy and timid. Lights go on, or where she's at, like she even said one day out loud, "The only time I'm ever happy is when I'm dancing."
Oh, bless her heart.
Yeah.
I know.
That's fantastic.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess how can you say no to that, right?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, ideally, that is because there's a lot involved as far as them having to be dedicated at a certain point when they decide to. So it's really important that they feel like a lot of love and a lot of safety and like nurtured in that environment.
A safe environment to
so that-
explore,
so that
right?
they can explore.
Yeah.
And I've never really put two and two together until I got involved with dance, and you know, it's stuff. You learn, I dare say, a lot more than you do when you're 10 years old on a soccer team, or in a little league team. I really do. You know, and it really shapes them emotionally. And you mentioned just a moment ago about being in touch with your emotions. I mean, that is huge. And so it's a medium that kind of fast tracks that, you know, at a young age, because that's what they're doing, right? They're
Well, they work. I'm just thinking about like your daughter's level, for example. There's 13 or 14 of them. They work very intimately together. So not only are they learning how to work out those different personalities and friendships, but then there's the other layer on top of that of connecting with dance as well, right? So it really does go deeper than...
Yeah, because that's the difference. Like, you know, when I remember playing Little League, you're jacked up or you're angry, and that's kind of it. There's not, it's like, oh, I like what I'm having fun, but you're not, you know, you're not.
You probably start to, there's sort of a necessity, and we really are big on this, is to start to develop an understanding of the nuances in between all those feelings. And you have to build that over time. But we do end up with some very sophisticated young people who have a really good understanding of some of the things that are layered in between happy, sad, angry.
Amazing.
You know,
Beautifully said. I think that's one of the unique characteristics of dance.
Yeah.
You know, and I think why it is so profound in those teenage years.
Well, and somebody once said to me that people watch dance because they really want to see real life somehow coming back at them, right? That those are the things they relate to on some level. So I always tell the dancers, my older dancers, but we work our way there, that they need to know how they're feeling when they're moving, doing these particular movements or this particular choreography, pardon me, because they can't ask the audience to feel something if they themselves are unclear about what it is that they're, and it doesn't have to be the same thing. They can feel something and do that on the stage, and the audience can get something else from it. That's totally fine, but it is about provoking people. It is about moving people.
It is. And so in your opinion, then what are some of the characteristics that make a good dancer? I mean, there's physical, there's technical, but we see it. Is it that emotional work and connection?
Sure, that's a huge...
That
emotional intelligence is a really valid and important thing when you're training as a dancer. And then when you go out into the world as a human, I think,
Well,
right?
yeah.
So
Now, is that can that be trained, or is some of that instinctual? You know, like.
oh, I think I mean, sometimes it's demanding what we're asking of them, how they're training their bodies, and
Yeah, and I don't know that, I mean, definitely some of it's instinctual, but you have to come into it of your own too, right?
and I think you can learn it. I think you can learn it, and I think dance is something that, you know, you sort of have to. There's moments where you may feel disappointed. There's moments where, you know, your teacher's been getting after you about something and you just can't seem to get it, or whatever those things are.
Sure.
And
Just
so
like
you
life.
so you just have to, so those things build emotional intelligence too. Those things are okay and important, along with all the encouraging and the,
Yeah, and I think too, let's not jump over the fact that we just established it's predominantly females, but you have females in their teenage years in a room together dealing with emotional content, hormones,
never
all,
a problem, there's never any.
all that. No, not at all.
No,
right?
no, not even a little bit. Yeah, it's a thing.
It's a thing,
It's
right?
a thing.
And it's,
It can be
huge.
challenging.
I bet.
And some of it is just about navigating, helping them navigate some of the interpersonal things that come up, and hopefully sometimes when they're having feelings that they need to get out, you always say this is exactly where you should be to try to
Yeah.
get them out.
Yeah.
Right? Use your dancing as a way to kind of heal.
To heal
Heal.
and express,
And
yeah.
express. Yeah.
Yeah, healing. Yep. My first instinct is expression, to emote, but it's also healing. Sure.
Definitely.
Wow.
Dance is life.
So in the dance is life.
Yeah.
In the few minutes we have left, you said something to me when we were talking a while ago about, and I think this sums up Innovate. You get just as much satisfaction from the graduating student that goes on professionally as you do from, you know?
Oh, yeah. They'll take everything that they've done in their dance classes and take that out into their lives. It could be something as simple as how they carry themselves, how they stand, the confidence. There's just so much. What else?
How they relate to other people. The fact that they may spend the rest of their life as a lawyer, but maybe they have season tickets to the ballet, you know, or their children, right?
Exactly.
I mean, a love of the arts is never a bad thing,
Never a bad thing.
right? So I think
Makes the world
some
a
of the
better place.
Yeah, some of the most wonderful humans I've ever met have gone on to not be dancers. They danced with us and shared with us, but they went on to other things. But they were present, and they were.
Yeah. Well, your daughter is moving on,
She is.
right?
Yeah, super excited for her.
Going to Montreal, is that right?
Yeah, this July she's moving to Montreal. She wants to pursue contemporary and modern dance. So I'm pretty excited for her. Yeah, it's pretty
One thing I
wonderful.
want to say real quick, because we do have to wrap up, but it's always emotional, like when you see the seniors.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the end of the show there was.
Yeah, it
emotional.
was.
And I wonder, does the audience
Oh, yeah.
feels that too,
Well,
right?
And I don't know a lot of the dancers by name, but I saw one of them just having a hard time staying focused during the dance. You know, and it's pretty cool.
I'm a meanie. I say, keep it together while you're out there. But yeah, I mean, because they're saying goodbye to a chapter,
Yeah, for
right?
sure,
So
for sure.
we're excited and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot, both real quick, before we go. You. Do you have a Cherish moment from the last 3 years?
Oh, Jim. A cherished moment from the last 3 years. Well, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. There's so many.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many.
You know, can I kind of
Take
jump
her
in here?
question?
Well,
Please.
not
You are
take her
related, so
question, but
help
I
me, help
just, For me, and I know for you, just the fact that we can pass on what we love about dance is cherish enough. Like, just that anybody can take what we love so much and take that on. That to me is the most important thing about having a studio.
I think it's hard for me to pick a moment because I really, there's lots of on stage, off stage. And so I share like really a lot of really special, excited moments. My favorites, maybe because I teach mostly the older kids, are my little tiny creative movement dancers. That's not a moment, but it definitely is a class that they're just 6 and 7, and we just do crazy stuff together, so they're fun.
All right, well, we're out of time. Yay. We could probably have a show just on dance moms and the chaos that ensues.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a whole other show.
Definitely.
Anyway, thank you for joining me today to talk about the love of dance. And congrats on a business that keeps growing, just because you guys are committed to spreading the love of dance with quality and love.
Yeah.
So, and thank you thank you at home for watching this show. We have kids, we always default to sports a lot of times, and I think dance also very often doesn't get categorized under sport, but it is. Dancers are athletes, and I challenge parents at home to make sure that you give your sons and your daughters a chance to learn how to grow through dance. It makes them a very better equipped person as they go in later in their young adult life, and they learn how to live, and really puts them in touch with emotions, and you can't put a price on that. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.